This is Ashley
And I'm Ren Westcode. Welcome to the Pilali podcast.
All around Hawaii, smart, passionate people are working to solve our state's most pressing problems.
We talk with activists, entrepreneurs, thinkers, and leaders who are creating solutions that are going to stick
and make positive, lasting change.
So welcome to Pilali. We're very happy to have you here.
Yeah, no, it's great to be on. Yeah, so cool you're doing this.
Yeah, well, let's see. Let's get it out in the earth. You know how it is, having the bravery to produce things, and then they take on a life of their own.
How do you guys get to know each other? I think that's the one story I didn't hear.
I remember the first time I met you. You don't remember because you were a legislator at the time. There were a lot of people coming in and out of your office.
Yeah, I remember because there's not a lot of excitement in that building, like in the state capitol. When I say that building, I probably was going to say that building a few times. Yeah, I'm talking about that big square building downtown.
Yeah, the new palace.
Yeah, it's ironically, if you want to have like a laid back kind of behind the scenes job, become a legislator. Like most of these dudes don't really get out there, you know, they're like tucked away. But like Ashley wasn't that. Like you were like just came in and your presence was known instantly, right? And this was doing like a lot of the pesticide and chemical fights, you know, spraying restricted use pesticides around our kids and some horrendous things by these chemical conglomerates. So like instantly we're aligned on the issue, but it was more of like the style you brought that I was like, okay, this person means it.
Yeah, you know, it was wild for me. I, at that time, had finished my PhD in political science. So you would think I knew a lot about the legislative process, but I spent my PhD writing about resistance movements and poetry and art. And so I walk into your office and I see bell hooks on the bookshelf, and I was like, who is this guy? Bell Hooks is a Black feminist theorist, Ren.
Okay. My movie's explaining.
Yeah.
And there was the Audre Lorde poster too, I think. Oh.
I really appreciated it. I mean, there's a kinship in the books one reads. Well, now one has to read books, Ren, to have that kinship.
I'll try it someday.
Is this the vibe of this? Or it's going to be just roasted red?
Yeah.
Okay.
The new name of the podcast is called Roasted Ren with Ashley. Anywho, not why we're here. So that's how we met. And you were, I think at the time, the youngest state legislator.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a baby. Yeah, I was like 24 probably when we met.
Tiny.
And what about, so you grew up on Maui, and what about your upbringing, or so what led you to run for office?
Yeah, I was also not very political at all. Working class, working poor, depending on the month, really. And, you know, as I think as a lot of people in Hawaii, it's not unique. But my dad passed away like unexpectedly when I was 11. So my mom had 4 kids, her grandma, and then I had to work in the pineapple fields to help with the bills. So like we went from like super conservative, like the government is bad and, you know, bootstraps. And, you know, I still was that. I was still like, you got to do whatever I can. But we realized like without the church, without the government, like Social Security, supplemental income, Medicare, like all the stuff, we would be on the streets, just like straight up. So radicalizing in a sense at that young age. And just seeing people like these migrant workers in the fields. And it's like, wow, like this is not a fair world really, you know, and something, it could be better. So that's what really shaped my politics. And then you have Lingo wins our only Republican governor, and then you have the Tea Party wave hit in 2010, and that's like when I'm graduating college, and it's just like such a political time. You know, Obama just won, so I ended up running for student president and won that, and that was like a crazy, weird race where, you know, the guy I was running against had like $5,000 from his parents.
Wow.
And like, yeah, he had the whole Senate running.
Where was this?
University of Hawaii at Manoa. So it was funny because, okay, so the student body is 70% in-state, 30% out-of-state. But the student government was 95% out-of-state. It was just one fraternity that just ruled it. And then they would like use all the money for like Oktoberfest.
No kidding.
At UH. Oktoberfest.
Wow.
So I'm like, well, what is this? You know?
Yeah.
And then Lingo cut our programs by like, I would have to take 3 more years. I was a music student at the time. I was studying classical guitar, and it would have taken me 3 years to graduate. So I'm over here with like long hair, you know, like not really clean cut guy, just music and, you know,
And
sports.
your guitar.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I got to do this politics thing. Cause like, yeah, it makes sense at the time. And my brother was, he was the youngest editor-in-chief of Kaleo student newspaper. So we kind of like jammed together and mounted a campaign, put the Hawaii back in UH. Not something I would say now, but like, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
It's so funny.
But then, so like a lot of the Senate hated me because I won by like 40 votes. But like we did a lot of cool things. Like we passed this socialized bus pass. So instead of like a poor kid paying $400 a semester, everyone pays $5 and everybody gets a bus pass.
I remember that.
So like even the rich kids were like, hell yeah,
Yeah.
you know. And that's what kind of really shaped my politics.
They could all catch the
real
bus
way.
to Oktoberfest.
Yeah, away from Oktoberfest to the beach. Yeah, and then we did protests. We kind of fought campus security. They're like, we lit lower campus because there's a lot of like assaults that were happening on campus at the time, and did some cool stuff like that. And I was like, really got the bug. So from there, just kind of followed that route.
What's the bug?
The bug is like, hey, if you're someone who's empathetic and wants to make change, you get pulled into like mutual aid or social services like directly. And it feels good. Like you're helping people at an individual level, but you're really just mopping the floor with the sink on. Like at a certain point, you're like, there's just more and more of these cases and it's not stopping. So it's like, we gotta get the root of the cause. We gotta fix the leak. And that is gonna be a policy thing. Like if you follow it all the way, if you follow the pipes, it ends up in politics. So,
You know, we've been talking a lot about the bug, and I feel like it's this ancestral, energetic, like relentless force that once you activate it, you find yourself moving towards where you can best make an impact. And it teaches you a lot, you know? So you run for office, I'm assuming, shortly after graduation.
yeah.
Were you pissed at the bug?
Well, I was bright-eyed, doe-eyed, and I thought like, okay, well, if the solutions are in politics, electoral politics is the way that like you can change everything. If I was just in those seats, we could fix it. And I was also working with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs out in DC, fighting for Section 8A stuff, like the same fight we're dealing with now.
What's Section 8A stuff?
It's small business support for native-led organizations. And at the time, it was on the chopping block, and it is again today. So I was like already doing the policy fight, and then the Tea Party wave happened back home. And if he got elected, this guy George Fontaine, but like if he got what he was advocating for when I was a kid, like that would have been it for my family. So I was like, okay, there's other kids like me out there, like I better try.
So just I want to pause. So you're saying that for your family, a system of social support is what kept you
Literally
able.
off the streets. Literally off the streets.
Literally off the streets.
Yeah.
And that is what enabled you to like continue pursuing, I mean, what has been a really amazing career path.
It enabled me, and it also, it's like I would not, it made me like so protective of those things and wanting to expand them. Like
Yeah.
it was enough for us at the time. It wasn't enough for others. And there's so many more like us out there. And that, you know, that chasm between the haves and have-nots continues to grow. So it only makes our work more urgent.
And your time in the legislature, I could see running for office. It's like student body president on steroids, right? You run for office, you get elected to the legislature, idealistically wanting to make a difference and help shape the system from within the system. How did you feel about that? Were you disappointed? Were you disillusioned? Did you think it was everything? Was it everything you thought it would be?
I mean, I'm somewhere in between. Like, I think in some ways we got lucky because I was able to take out a member of the opposing party. I was running as a Democrat. This guy was a Republican. But when you look at the way the legislature actually operates in a blue state like this, it's more about, it's more about like who's in leadership. So it's like the leadership team versus the dissidents.
Right. It's not D versus R.
Yeah, and
it's D versus D.
and kind of House versus Senate too.
Yeah.
They used to say that Republicans are opponents, but the Senate's your enemy in the House, which I don't subscribe to. But we can get into like the problems with the current system, the structure. But we came in and we flipped the dissident group to actually have the majority because of like Miros Takashi and a few others. So as freshmen, you usually don't get anything, but we were like special because we tilted it after they're trying for 17 years to gain power. So like I was getting like on average, people get like $7 million for their districts. I got like 130 million for my high school. It was like we're able to pass things, as freshmen. So that was sick. But then after a couple of years, they're like, oh, you're an outsider. Like they're trying to groom me to be like the next speaker, but they're like, oh, you really care about this in a way that's not just moving up the ladder. And then they started kind of pushing me out, and you were probably there to witness some of that.
I mean, one of the things I navigated in watching you and thinking about my own work as somebody who, for a period of my life, labeled myself as an anarchist. So then to start working at the state legislature as an advocate felt paradoxical. It felt ironic at times. But I watched you navigate this insider-outsider dynamic. It felt like you were there because you felt like being there mattered. And then they kind of told you, well, this is the rules of the game if you want to be here. And it felt like there was a time when there was a moment when it wasn't worth it anymore, when you felt like you couldn't continue pushing for your values if it required the kind of game playing that they wanted you to play. Did you leave because you felt like you were compromising your values? Was it just exhausting?
That's an honest assessment, and I appreciate you putting some thought into that. That's pretty cool. But to me, a lot of this just comes down to like our theory of change and how we view power, and how like a lot of folks that I grew up with, including myself and my family, are kind of like adverse to the idea of power. But like what does
that mean? You're averse to the idea of power?
Our experiences of power as people who didn't have much have been bad, right? It's been like this person is power hungry and they want to wield power over you, versus like power for you or power with you or empowering people. It was always more like power means like the shoes
the
coming
bad
down.
guys, right? The evil empire.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily how it has to be. And in fact, like we all have our own inherent power, and if we can like figure out how to unleash that, we're good. So like with my experience in the legislature, there was a point, there's only so much you can do. Like if you look at it as a whole movement ecosystem and like the power that needs to be felt throughout, then it's like you had me, who's like trying to navigate the legislature. Then you have you, who's an advocate. But then what does that mean without the grassroots at your flank and my flank? We're just asking people to appeal to their better angels. Like that's not how this works. At the end of the day, incentives matter. So, if that was there, and it was there for some of our fights, we had that energy from Maui growing with the pesticide stuff and other issues like the water rights. But then other issues that we wanted to push beyond that, like once the low-hanging fruits were picked, the grassroots power wasn't there. So it was just like us without a flank. At that point, I'm like, maybe my time is better used building that grassroots energy from the ground up. So that means like bringing people together, holding millions of conversations, training people to be leaders in their community, translating that to like put pressure on or support for decision makers, like, heads of corporations, developers, but also elected officials, and then building coalitions of organizations around that.
Yeah, this is like an important point, which is like we can elect progressive leaders who reflect our values, but if we don't show up for them,
that's right,
in the actual complexity of democracy, we sort of leave them to be hung by the very system that's keeping power in power.
Yeah, if you believe in like what we believe in, which is like, the environment should be something we don't extract from, something that we're like one with. If you believe in the idea that there's enough for everyone to like have what they need and take care of each other, like if you're someone with those radical views, you come in, you have two options. You can either be a bomb thrower, like an outsider, and not really get anything done, or you can become one with the ship and then compromise too much of it and then not really move things done. And the only way you can like navigate the middle is if you have a flank and be like, look, my community really needs that. And like if someone's against you and they're like another legislator, you're like, oh, I have 10 people in your community who are saying this, you should listen to them.
And so after your time in the legislature, then you moved into that sort of flank building, right? You sort of get into organizing. So where did you go from there?
Yeah, well, that was interesting too, because there's these things called what we call in the movement like the moments of the whirlwind. And those things, there are moments, like Selma is probably like a really obvious example for people that come from the civil rights tradition or around during that time, where
What
it's
was
like
Selma?
Selma's MLK moment when
Ashley,
he marches
come on.
everybody.
That
No,
was
he's
when,
she's
no,
doing
let me
that.
explain it to her.
She's doing the
Let
diary
me
of the
explain it
CEO.
to
She's
her.
doing the diary of the CEO thing where it's like, you know, you ask
Explain
the
it to
question
her.
for the. Okay, it was MLK.
A pivotal moment in the civil rights
movement where, you know, they knew it was going to be violent, but they decided to march there anyways in order to get the public attention on the matter in a really profound way that could make more things possible. So, you know, my partner Evan on the Our Hawaiʻi side, he was part of creating a moment of the whirlwind when AOC gets elected and does a sit-in with the youth in Nancy Pelosi's office, and that moment kind of shine light on this idea of a Green New Deal, which shifted, you know, the idea from climate action being around taxes to being around like a broader vision of like a new society, which in turn shaped Bionomics and sort of started the slide of neoliberalism. Or whatever, allowing people to do their thing.
Did you follow that?
Allow corporations to do their thing.
I love it.
No. It's like it used to be what we have to give up in order to fix the climate, and then it's like the frame shift was like what we can get, and that was the whole idea, and that was made possible by that moment of the whirlwind. Selma's another moment of the whirlwind, right, where it's like all of a sudden, it's like I'm talking to like old school organizers, and I'm like, but I just threw this football 200 yards, and they're like, that's impossible. Like I seen your arm. You can only throw a ball like 20 yards. And I'm like, no, like it happened, but it's because of these moments, right? And it's hard to grasp it, but there are moments like that. So 2019 is when Mauna Kea pops off again. So I'm just like trying to help them out and like where I can. And it's another moment where you're just seeing like people organize so quickly and like resources and people and volunteers flowing at like a clip that's remarkable, but also unsustainable if you don't create the same kind of like the right systems to absorb them. So the way we organize is sort of based on that model. Like we're doing the one-to-ones and building locally and very intentionally. Like
is this Our Hawaiʻi you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so just back up for a second. So I don't know, what is Our Hawaiʻi and what do you guys sort of founded for, and what do you do?
Yeah, so we're founded to fill the gaps in this movement ecosystem that I speak of in Hawaii, where there's the advocates, there's a lot of these grassroots groups that are doing like local Aina work and, you know, really grassroots organizing.
Aina is the land. And yet so much more.
Yeah.
This is for our non-Hawaii viewers, of which we sure there are going to be 3.
Yeah, just filling the gaps, you know. And there also wasn't, because we don't come from the civil rights tradition and have that same history of, you know, demographics and everything. We don't have a lot of the civil rights legacy base building groups, which this idea that we're talking about where it's like you need a base of people to show up politically at like the right moments, like that didn't exist here. There's no like multi-issue group that was like base building at the time. I think HAPA, who like are real close partners with us, was like starting to develop something like that, but they are more oriented towards like the advocacy and electoral side of things. So we wanted to make sure we hit that gap, and we did it in a way that honored the best practices of like old school structure-based organizing that like unions practice, but also recognize that like these moments of the whirlwind either happen organically or we can make happen, and there's ways to kind of absorb, like recruit, train, and repeat, and keep that cycle going.
Okay, so you do, what you're doing here is if I'm understanding correctly, you are building a group of people who say, I agree with what you're standing for. When you need support, I'm here, and that they agree on a set of issues that you're pursuing, or a set of values, but you can call on them when you need.
He's growing an army of your worst enemies, Ren.
Not my worst enemies. Hopefully.
No, yeah, sort of. It's like, I believe in democracy, and in a deep way. Not necessarily direct democracy. Like I think representative democracy works, but it's just been hijacked in a really intense way, especially in recent years, where a lot of people feel like working people aren't being represented. And if you actually look at the polls, the data will back that up. Like the things that poll the best among the working population have the lowest chance of passing, be it in the Hawaii legislature or in Congress. And you have both parties right now are kind of fighting over this group of people, particularly like non-college educated people. And they're like, they want to be the party for the workers. But when you actually look at the policies they pass and the people supporting these parties, Democrats obviously are a lot better, but they tend to help the corporations a little bit more, like the large ones. And then the Republicans are going with the billionaires and the oligarchs. So it's like this battle between the corporations and the oligarchs. And
to say who represents
to
the
say
working
who
class.
represents the working class.
I love it.
So it's like, how do you just get the working class to have an actual voice before we even enter that electoral or legislative realm? So it's not necessarily like, here are the things that we got to support. It's like, what's important in your community first off and foremost. If I knock on doors in Palolo, which our group was just doing, they might say like, hey, our homes are old and it needs repairs. So it's like, can we do that somehow? Can we like in Pennsylvania, they did this bill called the Whole Homes Repair, and it just like got a lot of people that were house rich, money poor to like, make ends meet and then believe in government again. And like, it's just like starting from where people are in a really deep way. If they say, hey, I just want trash pickup, like, or, or these potholes filled, start there. And then once you build their trust, then you can start like looking at the bigger things.
And so it's a combination of building the network of voters who are going to support, who are
not even voters,
just
people
like
first.
No labels. Yeah. Just straight up people.
And then, but at the same time, how do you meet their needs? Like, are you also pushing policies? You're advocating policies, or how do you fill the potholes? Is my question.
Yeah. So to make it like really real, when the fires happened and Ashley and I were working together and figuring out how to resource it and where the gaps were, we knew that this idea of disaster capitalism wasn't just individual realtors trying to call people and get their land. Like the real big moves happen down the line. Big developers, legislators, regulators. And the question is like, are people who are dealing with the immediate loss of their homes and everything they ever loved going to be equipped to actually have a say in that? And without intervention, I thought it was really clear that the answer would be no.
Right.
So it's like, how do you empower them to do that? So, you have social service providers doing a place at the mall that was like, hey, we have a one-stop shop, but like these people lost their cars. They're not driving out to the mall, so they would get like 10 people a day. We found 5 survivors, trained them up, and then gave them iPads, and they did needs assessments in the hotels, and they signed up 4,000 people in like 2 days, right? And then in those questions, it directed them to the right service providers. But at the end, it's like, would you be down to like link in with your community members and like show up at these council meetings or whatever is needed? And like 90-something% said yes. So from then, like we're passing out these shirts too, the Lahaina Strong shirts. And then, so by then,
Gotta
have
have
like
cars though. Gotta get them cars.
Yeah, and then you have like these natural leaders like Pilali and Jordan and Courtney who are already like doing their own thing in their own way, and like we just kind of supported them. Like we made sure they didn't have to go back to work in tourism, for example, and resource them and just like let them pick whatever issues they wanted. And then from there, it just turned into what it turned into, which is quite a remarkable movement.
Yeah.
I had this moment actually at a Mauna Kea protest that was down the main street in Waikiki, our biggest commercial settler colonial structure in Hawaii. And
Also where hotels are that people stay here when they come to visit Hawaii.
And there were tens of thousands of Native Hawaiians, mostly flags, kids, all speaking Hawaiian. And I thought to myself, like, this is the future. Like, whatever happens with the Mauna, whether the telescope is built or not built, and I'd love for you to explain to folks the crisis. I agree with you. It was a complete paradigm shift moment for politics in Hawaii at a level I've never viscerally experienced in my life, where like the center of gravity for me had been before, like, what is sovereignty and could that ever happen, to it's happening, get ready. And I feel like I'm watching the political system in our state realign to that. But that, for me, was this incredible moment of realizing that there is a nascent movement of people ready to rise up. They just have to be given the invitation to participate in something that actually reflects their real values.
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment. We were up there. I had my 3-year-old at the time, and then the baby. Hollywood was like a few months old, I think. So he couldn't stay up there too long because it's the elevation. But yeah, it did seem like that. But based on what I knew about how movements work and my own experiences, I knew that it wouldn't sustain itself, that these things they ebb and flow, and it could sort of be like a flash in a pan if we don't have some way to absorb and train folks. And I don't think we quite nailed that. There's some groups that came from the Mauna that I thought like got beefed up quite a bit, and they deserve to because they're doing great work. But like in terms of taking that energy and sustaining it and plugging it into like policy interventions and institution building, I think there's a lot of lessons there from my own organizing. Like I tried a couple of times. We did this thing called like Hawaiʻi Rising, where we brought the Mauna to the Capitol on opening day. It was cool. We had like Fiji, Maui playing, and we hijacked all the conference rooms and made it into Pu'uhulu University. So like the people that are doing they turned parts of the Mauna into like a university where practitioners and academics would teach people things for free. It was really sweet. But on that day, we like took over the Capitol and put it in the things. But that was only made possible because we brought a lot of institutional players in, and which was great because it scaled quickly. But then it wasn't able to scale as deep because we brought them in so quickly. So it's like, once that day was over, everyone's kind of back to their grind. So it kind of taught us a lesson of like, you got to scale deep, scale up before scaling wide sometimes, and what that means, like which organization can hold it, and like which new nascent things need to come up. So that's why in 2021 we did Our Hawaiʻi, and
So do you want to just explain to folks what the battle around Mauna Kea
And the telescope.
Oh yeah.
Mauna Kea has been here for a long time. Telescope is fairly new.
Yeah, they wanted. Well, that was the thing, right? It's not fairly new. They've been.
The last one is.
They've
new.
been doing a ton of telescopes, but this one was just dwarfed it all. It was like 5 or 6 like football fields wide. It was like a giant thing, right? And then they had to dig pretty deep into the mountain.
They're proposing to build a 30-meter telescope.
30-meter telescope, which, frankly, a lot of the capabilities of the James Webb now floating around space would have, rendered it obsolete. But there is some use to putting it on the ground. But like me, I love astronomy. I'm not gonna lie. Like I can't just hate on astronomy. Mm-hmm. It's just like science without permission, without consent, is still colonialism. Mm-hmm.
And so what happened is a very long, intense protest against building this telescope. I'm just explaining for folks that weren't following.
It was an occupation,
right? And this is from what years was this again?
It was an occupation, a la like the Dakota Access Pipeline. Mm-hmm. Like it was that scale
to prevent the construction of the telescope
directly.
And this was. Do you remember what year? What year was this?
It started in 2015. It was like a short victory, and then they tried again in 2019, and that's when it really popped off.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it was people were talking about this all over the place on lots of social media networks, which I don't have myself.
I mean, they occupied it. The occupation lasted for like over, I don't know how long was it, probably like a year and a half or.
Yeah. Yeah, I am remembering it was the same time as what is the Standing Rock? they felt like two
There was some
parallel
overlap. Yeah.
moments where we were questioning whether or not commercial, capitalist, scientific progress can persist through native lands and more specifically sacred spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because the Mauna is not just a mountain. I mean, it is a apex of Hawaiian spirituality. It's a sacred space.
That's right.
And so to desecrate it in the name of like the religion of capitalism felt like a little too...
In the name of understanding nature is deeply ironic and paradoxical. And yeah, so like the one lesson from that too was like you have like Antipua, Kohokahi, and these people that were of the land, not just because they're Native Hawaiian, but because they're like from that area directly. And I think it was that natural leadership that allowed it to scale out so widely. So it became a worldwide thing. And that's one lesson that does not come naturally to a lot of people. It's what we try to practice in Lahaina, because when people want to scale something, or like I want to do an international project, or even like a national project, they do these polls and they say like what resonates with the most people, but it's like you're talking about resonating 40% with the most people, not like what is really authentically felt in the area. And it kind of waters it down and it makes the organization feel generic and quite frankly elite. But when you actually look at how culture plays out, and I use this term very intentionally, it's like culture as in like our traditions, but also just like what we understand as the common sense right now, and it's always evolving. Like how culture plays out is it's a working class of a particular area, and it's different, and then it branches out. So you think of like hip hop culture, how it dominated the 90s. It was like West Coast. It was like one tiny area in LA, and then one tiny area in New York, and then that became like American culture somehow, right? And that's how culture works. It's like how do you get those voices and that like those ideas to shine? And it's not through polls and data testing. I mean, those help down the line and to like adjust things, but you have to let that energy, that working class energy that's hyper local, breathe. And that's the lesson from Mauna Kea for me that we take in all of our work now.
Yeah. And I was so as a Native Hawaiian, I was so torn. I love astronomy. I love development. I develop projects myself, like renewable energy projects. That's my job, my day job. And so, on one hand, I was like, oh, this is such, this is a super exciting project. And they've gone through all the legal steps to get it done. And yet on the Native Hawaiian side, I was like, oh, but, Native Hawaiians, so many things have been built without consent. Every hotel, every bit of infrastructure, has been built on Native Hawaiian land originally without consent. And we've lost so many battles we weren't even in, right? We weren't even involved in so many battles. No one asked. It was not even, protests are new, right? When you think about it, protests are, the 70s, late 70s maybe. And so I think the voice, I was on one hand, I supported the telescope. I wanted it to go. But on the other hand, I was like so proud of the uniting of Native Hawaiians to stop it and to claim a voice that they haven't had for decades, and to finally, like, all the stars aligned and the protest was big enough and strong enough and long enough to just grind the wheels of progress to a halt. And so I was really, to this day, I am like so split on it.
I mean, I think that conundrum shines a light on like, okay, you mentioned they went through all the processes, yet hundreds of thousands of Hawaiians saying they don't consent to this.
Yeah,
so
new part of the process.
so what's the point of that process?
Yeah.
Is it legit?
Yeah, exactly. That's the social license that we're talking about now. They were talking about the other day. Is like, do you really have all the permits, even the one that's not written into law? Do you have the real legit permission?
Yeah. So when you say like, why aren't like Hawaiians like running for office or voting or trying to get on boards, it's like because these processes, like the one you just described, doesn't actually work for them. Even when you follow it to the T, it's like what Hawaiians are being consulted with, and like how's it actually coming down to community. That said, I think this conversation, like you said, you're a clean energy developer. That's kind of the work that I had to do. I have kids now. Like over the last few years, even nationally, with like passing the Inflation Reduction Act and organizing around that. And it does seem like a lot of the tools that we relied on to stop bad projects, we need to like figure out how to actually start and cite and scale.
Yep.
Like the speed and scale question answered. If we believe in like, if we're environmentalists and believe in climate justice and all the things. And I just don't see that really happening on the movement side. So like, how do we do that in a way that's not just like eradicate the protections we need for the bad stuff,
right?
But like we also get the good stuff going.
Yeah.
So that's been a struggle for me as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I see in my work, like, and in when I think about sort of development more broadly, or anything you're trying to develop, any sort of project is going to have impacts, and I find that I think people recognize that if you have that Native Hawaiians right now are at a moment where they have a lot of power, unofficial social licensing power to stop things, and I think you can see it on Mauna Kea. You could see, where I grew up. You could see it in a lot of places where somebody comes in and proposes a development, and if you have a group of Native Hawaiians that opposes it, that really can get not just other Hawaiians but other people to be like, wow, that is that is really there are cultural issues which are not being addressed, and so I find Native Hawaiians are often on the other side of renewable energy projects.
Yeah.
Right. And
well, there's something under that premise I want to push back on.
Sure.
Okay. So when I first ran for office in Kihei, there's a mega mall that was proposed in a white district. They shut it down immediately. There was a large development, and they shut it down immediately. There's a reason why we're putting windmills on the leeward side and not the windward side. It's because white communities with means could shut down things immediately. So the idea that Hawaiians have more power to shut down projects, I just don't buy.
Yeah, well,
no, but like the urgency of why they want to shut down projects is because we're citing them in these communities, and we're not citing them in rich communities.
Yeah, that's true.
So why is that? Right?
Yeah,
that's when we talk about environmental justice. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, because they already built homes in all the white places.
Right. We can't follow the same colonial patterns that the fossil fuel industry exhibited in citing and scaling clean energy.
Yeah, and I actually, I'm saying it as a potential for good. I think, I've talked about this before. I hope that we can move to a model for energy projects where the communities that host the projects, where they're built in those communities. It's been, like you're saying, it's a environmental equity problem, right? We're sticking the solar projects out in Waianae, and other places.
But it's not just because like, oh, they're nefarious and they hate Hawaii. Just like that's cheaper, but like let's unpack why it's cheaper and why it's more cost effective.
Exactly. Yeah. But I'm hoping there may be a positive dimension here in that, if we could get a model for projects where either energy projects or infrastructure projects where the Hawaiian communities or the communities that are near the projects have an equity stake, where they actually own part of the project, and that's part of the deal. You want to build it here, we get to own 51% of the project, right? And they raise the financing and they purchase that equity. I think that could be a whole different model where now it is, we say it's your project, but it really would be, community-owned project. So that's what I'm hoping we can work.
Yeah, 100%. And that was actually ended up in a lot of our work nationally with like trying to figure out how to resource community groups to actually engage in CBAs or community benefit agreements and like be on the table when these things are even being proposed and planned. But I think the key word here is planned. They're just never, the way clean energy and capitalism works versus how clean energy or American capitalism versus how clean energy in China works, where they have more solar than 2 Texases now and transmission lines spread across the entire China, is the difference of planning. They just plan it out. Now, of course, the
I'm
pushback.
Gonna push back on that.
Well, they don't have to ask anybody.
Totalitarianism.
Yeah.
I mean, Epstein files. Like, like there's okay. Let's not play like the moral. Like, the difference is labor rights and pollution and pollution regulation, right? But like the idea of just planning and not leaving it up to the market wildly is what we need to be pursuing here.
Yeah.
Like I think like, if we're to look at how a corporation would like plan out kaka'ako or like whatever, Howard Hughes, like we can also do that democratically through governmental means if we clean up the government in a place like Waianae. It's just that we haven't been able to do it because you have corporate capture of our government.
I want to go back to the moment. I mean, I'm hearing your theory of change, which resonates deeply with me, which is regardless of the issue, regardless of the moment of the whirlwind, we have to start creating active community, whether that active energy is leveraged towards something as simple as a pothole or mutual aid, or it builds a graft that moves up to policy work. Like, we have to be intentional about that. That doesn't just happen on its own in a sustained way. And so Our Hawaiʻi is your mechanism of really actually starting to root people in the project of like being together and figuring out how to share resources together and have clean water together.
Yeah, and Our Hawaiʻi is like always meant to be like a collective thing. And so the theory of change is three parts. It's like grassroots power, which is the people power we're talking about. Then it's electoral power, like governance power. And that's like, we do participate in elections. And then there's like cultural power, which is like shaping the broader narrative. So yeah, less about Hawaiians want to stop these projects and more like, hey, Hawaiians want to plan these projects democratically and be a part of it. So like controlling those sort of narratives. And those three things can take different forms. Like, you know, we did Our Hawaiʻi Pledge where we got candidates to commit to a bunch of things, a platform that was created by a bunch of community groups all together. And then on the other side of that, not take money from the people that were against it, which was novel idea, but they did it. We got like 52 candidates to pledge publicly, like on social media, and sign the thing. And then a bunch of them got elected. And now that's like, we have this cool partnership going on. On the grassroots side, we have like Lahaina Strong, and we want to start hoʻis like that all over the place. And then on the media side, yeah, we want to do stuff like we're doing now. And yeah, continue to shape the narratives and kind of build out like Our Hawaiʻi media system. We have like, you know, influencers online that used to lean traditionally right. That's like kind of opening their eyes and seeing like the importance of like community first sort of organizing. And yeah, we want to build it out on all those fronts.
When you talk about theory of change, like what's the change that you want to see?
I want people to feel empowered and feel like it's worth investing in themselves as leaders and in their neighbors as partners, and see themselves not just being able to stop something that's like an acute issue, but actually have their hands like on the levers of power in like a way that they never felt before. Yeah. That's always the goal. So like, I think like we have like Civil Beat always talking about, it's like a news thing here. They're always talking about how there's so much apathy, and they point to our voter statistics. Only 30% of people voted. 25% of people voted in the primary. That's actually big. You know, in New York, primaries can be won with 3% turnout. 25 in a primary is actually massive. They don't vote in the general here because why would you when it's a Democratic, you know, majority and the presidential election doesn't really count. So when you look at that, they're not actually apathetic, but there's still 75% of people not voting, right? So like, how are they apathetic? I would challenge people to knock on doors in your community, and you'll see very quickly they're not apathetic. They're just exhausted, and they feel like they're spinning their wheels. Yeah. So like they'll tell you voting doesn't matter. So like, what can you get them doing that they feel like does matter? It's not gonna. You can't shame them into voting, right? So it's like, find that hook and then like bring it somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, I love it because I think so many of the efforts around politics are to get you to vote for me. Yeah. And your effort is really just to get you involved, to get people involved and feeling, not even voting, but feeling like you don't have to, the system can work if we participate.
Yeah. Like in my community, it was like the power lines in Ho'opili, was like a big issue. And then it was, in the Waipahu area next to us, it was like literally about trash pickup. And it's like, okay, if you knock on doors and you say, hey, I'm here at a community group and like we want to know what's important to you, and like 3 people say that, then you go to the next door and you say, hey, 3 people said this, do you agree? Yeah. And then you like sign this, or here's a QR code, and like do the Google form. At the end of it, it's like, would you be down to come to a meeting or join a list? And then you do that in a community, and it's all around the same issue. When you call a meeting, you're going to get like 400 people out. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we've lost a culture of genuine organizing? Because what you're talking to me about feels like something that's not sexy. It's not on Instagram and Facebook. It's not going to make a reel, but it's actually genuinely starting to build real relationships intact. And there's just so many reasons why walking door to door doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. Well, because people don't want to answer because they think you have an agenda, right? They're like, you're going to sell them solar.
Yep.
Or you're going to sell them something, or you're just being like, vote for me.
I don't sell that kind of solar.
I know.
Not the solar I do.
I don't.
Or they have a Ring camera and they're like, nope.
And honestly, I don't mind those guys, but like, because I appreciate anyone going door to door. It's a slog, but it's very empowering, and it's exciting when it's like your community and you're making connections. Like, let's say if 3 people in want trash pickup, and the 4th person, you're like, you want to come with me? They're like, yeah, like let's go. And then all of a sudden it's like neighbors talking to neighbors, and then they're training.
Is it really
along the way.
though? Is that what you've experienced?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many communities have you done this in?
Not enough. I mean, when we wanted to like really kick off, the fires hit. So we dedicated all the capacity to Lahaina. So this is us coming out of the other end just this year, and basically trying to do Lahaina Strong everywhere.
What does success look like for Our Hawaiʻi? When will you feel like, okay, hey, we've nailed it, we're done?
Yeah, I think we'll have like in the next couple of years, a couple dozen huis, we call it. Like it'll be like a R Palolo and R Waianae or something, and then we'll have
so like a regional, so more like regional.
Yeah, and leadership, like, and if we do this thing right, like we can replicate it where it's like if you have 3 friends and you're down to organize, we'll provide you with like, here's an agenda and slide deck and whatever you need, like merch for the first meeting, like here's scripts for the doors. Like it's this idea of like front loading that can make these things scale really quickly. Wow. And with the Sunrise Movement, it was kind of based on that sort of concept as well.
I know your co-founder Evan came out of the Sunrise Movement. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the Sunrise Movement was, as I mentioned, there was that Green New Deal moment where we pivoted from what you can lose for climate action to the beautiful vision of what can be gained and everything that can be transformed. And it made it less siloed. It was more about like connecting to economics and justice and everything. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez ran on this idea with the help of Sunrise Movement. And it was just like a nascent thing of just some policy folks that had big plans in their heads. But after the sit-in in Pelosi's office that these kids coordinated alongside AOC, it blew up. And this idea of the Green New Deal really hit the zeitgeist and mainstreamed all over worldwide media. And it became, and because of this front loading of how to build an organization, they end up having like hundreds of chapters almost overnight across the US and became the largest environmental and climate org in America. And it was just young
Very
folks.
youth-driven.
Yeah, just young folks just hungry for change because they're like, we have 10 years left, like we got to move now. So it really just transformed not just the way we talk about climate, but the way we look at the economy writ large.
Can you talk a little bit about what happened with Lahaina Strong and how that model of patient, door-to-door power building worked and what it resulted in for Lahaina?
Yeah, Lahaina Strong was actually, it's like a hybrid thing where it is that one-to-ones, but it's also moment of the whirlwind because fire and everybody's trying to figure out what to do. But Lahaina Strong existed as a brand because Jordan Rudius actually started Lahaina Strong in the Hurricane Lane fires in 2018. But then you had Pa'ele and others that were like all over the news for heroic actions, like going back and saving the grandma and all that stuff. And he was already kind of a spokesperson in the community for his work with Honolua. So he kind of rose up naturally. And then you have like Courtney, who is more of like a community person that we identified earlier as someone who could be a really strong leader, because she just kind of approached things in a non-political way that we thought was really genuine, and like, you know, just had that vibes of like someone who just really cared and was a mother. So with the three of them, we were able to just kind of get it going. But the first thing we had to do was actually bring in all the people that were expected to be like the community leaders and sort of ask for their blessing for this generation to really just step up. And that was a really intense meeting, because it was like people that have PTSD. So I kind of helped Pa'ele shape that meeting and stuff. And
I remember the moment right after the fire, you and I had a call, and you were like, Ashley, we have to be able to talk about this in terms of building political power. We can't. There's a political reason why this is unfolding the way it's unfolding. And if we don't have if politics is not a part of the recovery strategy, we're going to lose something. Like, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have this like big five legacy, whereas the first five oligarchical families turned into the five largest landowners and corporations, and remnants of them exist today. So like, you know, Alexander and Baldwin, there's certain groups that have outsized power here. And that's felt in things like this, because like HECO, for example, has been around since the Kingdom days, and Hawaiian Electric. And, you know, you're in a community where the median house is $1.2 million. Where else in America would you find infrastructure that looked like Manila? It would all be underground, right? In that kind of community. But Hawaiian Electric just kind of let it go while giving their guys raises and stuff. I think we're in an interesting moment now where, like, if anyone's listening to this and getting uncomfortable because I'm naming these corporations, we're in a moment now where, like, they got bought out by private equity. And it's literally like these corporations that used to be the bad guys in Hawaii are just dwarfs now. It's like all of us against these private equity giants and these oligarchs. They're just like a few billionaires that just, like, you can be a CEO of the biggest company in Hawaii and you don't have any real power right now.
Let's take a moment and talk about this shift, because both American Savings Bank, and which was a sister company to HECO under the umbrella of HEI, was bought out. And then Alexander and Baldwin was bought out by a private equity firm. Like, what does that mean technically when it comes to the ownership of a company?
Okay, on a technical aspect, I don't know if I'm the most, politically, I'll say, like, it's like we need more than just like demonizing any one corporation or pointing fingers. It's just like, if these survivors don't have power over these political decisions that we've made, they're gonna have to leave Lahaina, and it's gonna be bad in terms of like, and for everyone, like people need, every leeward coast of every community is facing the same thing. Like on Kauai, on Waianae, there's fires every summer in Nanakuli. No one talks about that. At any point, the road is one way in, one way out, just like Lahaina. So if we don't fix that, and like if HECO gets $1 billion for grid hardening, like we got to make sure it happens. They're getting it from the federal government. Like if they just end up spending it on whatever, stock buybacks, that's bad. That could kill people.
So you're saying the community that you're building is about accountability, whether that accountability comes in terms of our corporate neighbors or our government.
I think accountability is second. I think it's empowerment first, accountability second.
Yeah. And because, I mean, to me, the shift, we were talking about who owns the equity in the companies, that's only relevant in that, it's relevant in that the decision making is going to be further and further from the people who are getting impacted.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to jump in here. I sat on a corporate board of a company, Ergo Baby, that was formed locally by a woman who cared deeply about Hawaii and built a company here in Hawaii that served the community, and it was bought out by a private equity firm. These guys live in the hyper wealthy suburbs of LA and New York, and they stole the soul of the company, A, and B, they're absolutely not accountable to anything other than their listing on the stock market. And private equity as a form of wealth and investment is so many layers detached from the actual operations. You know, they beam in on the CEO or the leadership every 4 months, not to say, what are you doing for your employees and the community around you, but like, how much money are you making? And the relentless pressure that private equity is putting on any system where it's investing is so unaccountable because, again, of these layers of detachment. So I only bring that up because I think that it's a phenomenon we're seeing across our economy where private equity is now buying up homes. It's buying up like the fundamentals of being alive. And it is capitalism in hyperdrive. And I totally agree. The fact that now one of the largest landowners in Hawaii is going to be driven by a private equity firm, like, we should all be terrified.
Yeah, and to that note, it is like it is a lane to like unify the quote unquote left and right, because even Trump is saying like, oh, we got to stop Blackstone from buying up properties. And there's a realignment happening where the right has turned from a free market party to a nationalistic party, and then the left is, you know, doing its thing, focusing more on human needs. If you're going the way of Mandami, it's continuing its course if you're, you know, looking at someone else. But, you know, there's clear alignment around like even if you're just like, I want to start a company and build it, the only goal right now is like it's all about your exit, right? And it always ends up with private equity. Like that's the dream of someone starting up a company now. Like that's sad. That's like a perverted way of like thinking about business. But that's like, anyone I talk to who's in the startup realm is like, oh, what's your exit plan? I'm like, that's like, come on. Like, I thought you want to build something. So, I think it is, on that note, like a really positive thing that we can really unite folks around.
So how do we build this culture of empowerment and accountability outside of the door-to-door organizing? Like, how do people connect in with Our Hawaiʻi and understand? It sounds like you're building a Swiss Army knife, and now we all need to learn how to use it.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I think one part of the analysis that we didn't quite get into is that a lot of people don't understand why so many Hawaiians and Filipinos and working class people went the way of Trump when he's going against their interests. I feel like it's kind of obvious. You know, the way he talks about the establishment, the things that aren't working for people, the nationalistic sort of rhetoric. When you're talking about nationalism and you're a superpower, it ends up being quite evil. When you're talking about nationalism, you're hearing about nationalism, but you don't have your own nation, or you just want your own nation, like a Hawaiian or a Filipino, it's like, oh yeah. You know, it's a whole different thing because it's one's colonial, one's decolonial, but it's the same sort of messaging. So it's like an obvious appeal for so many Hawaiians and Filipinos. And when you look at the data of and the exit polls from Kalihi and Waianae and Waimanalo, it tracks. Like those are the biggest gains. So a lot of the work I do on the narrative front is trying to win back those folks and like non-college educated folks. So it's like, oh, if you see me online and it seems a little bit more rough, that's why. You know, I'm trying to actually connect in that way that's less esoteric.
I'm just baffled that the Democratic Party, who kind of used to own the working class, right, the blue collar America, has just lost it completely lost it, and honestly, has not seemed like they've tried to get it back. I mean,
Not the establishment, but I think Mamdani's trying to get it back.
Yeah.
AOC's trying to get it back.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how that tracks here, but when you look at Portlock and stuff and these communities that used to be Romney voters that are now like solidly Democrat, and you look at places that used to be Democrat that are now solidly Republican, what does that mean if you support workers' rights and like you don't want all the wealth continuing to just go up, like, but you also support feminism and women's rights and LGBTQ rights, where does that leave you? Like, where's your home? Where's your political home? So part of building something like Our Hawaiʻi is also giving those sorts of people a political home outside these two parties that are realigning in really haphazard ways.
Do you think it's possible to have a third party, either locally or nationally, that's viable?
Not with the current constraints now. I think Pa'ele is exploring running as an independent right now, which would shake up things quite drastically. There are conversations about reviving the Home Rule Party in Hawaii that took over the legislature 2/3 in 1903.
Oh, wow.
And elected Robert Wilcox to the Congress. But yeah, there's too many headwinds and like structural limitation hurdles to like actually make one viable. But let's say in the con or through a con-am,
We'll back up.
You open up
Constitutional Convention.
Constitutional Convention or a constitutional amendment.
Okay, this is
opens
where
up
explain like when this happens.
Yeah, this every 10 years, last was 2018, next is gonna be 2028.
Okay,
Is
we have
this
the
a
option of
Hawaii
doing it.
thing, or nationally any state can redo their state constitution?
Any state can theoretically redo their constitution. Most states, as in like nation states, do update their constitution every 10 years or so. America brags about having the oldest constitution. I don't know why. That sounds horrible. This is before the internet was invented. This is before, like, this is talking about hundreds of years back, and it's structurally a problem. So like, you have 17% of voters go MAGA, 17, and they get 100% of the government. You have 12% go Democratic Socialist, and they get 2 seats, maybe less right now. In Germany, you have the alternative for, the AfD. It's like the Nazi party now, the neo-Nazi party. They get 17% as well, like right around there, 17 or 18, and they get 0% of the government because the coalitional party comes in. All the coalitions of all the other parties come in and block them, even though they're not like the natural coalition that usually forms, because they have a multi-party democracy. They have what's called proportional representation, where if you get 12% of the vote, you get 12% of the seats. Most modern democracies have that, some form of that. In New Zealand, they have the Maui party. You have like a small animal rights party, and everybody. Then you have to build a coalition government, so it's not going to be just pick one or the other. And if there's an opportunity to model that in Hawaii, I think we should look at it very closely, or at least considering or like what that could mean versus the risk or the rewards that can be gained from it. So like when people talk about CONCON, they don't usually talk about structural stuff like that, but I think they should.
Yeah. You want to see where the powerful interests are, try to change where the power goes.
Do you have like what's giving you hope right now?
What's giving me hope is there's I think the realignment, I think it's becoming very clear that there's a class of people, this like Epstein class, that's completely unaccountable to any party, any law enforcement, and the rest of us are playing by a different set of rules.
Yeah.
And people are starting to wake up to that. And I also have 2 kids, and if I wasn't just naturally optimistic, I don't know what I'd do.
I think activism is fueled by the bug is part optimism. Whatever the bug is, it's partly relentless optimism.
Yeah.
I have one more follow-up question about like Trump as a political whirlwind. Like, do you see the crisis he's creating as something we can leverage?
Yeah, I think Trump, it's interesting because a lot of people on the left of center talk about building a multiracial working class movement. And it hasn't necessarily been won. The closest thing we ever seen to that in my generation was MAGA. And nobody wants to admit that. They're like, oh, that's white fringe. But it's like, not really. If you actually look at the data, he kind of did it. So that's scary, but it also shows that it's possible. And, if we can actually show that everything they voted for is actually against their interests, and I think people are waking up to it, then the alignment's almost like kind of there. Now, where does that leave us on the social issues and making sense of that? Like, I think there is a lane for a third party if we can win these structural changes. And what gives me hope is that there's a lot of folks in philanthropy and people with like high net worth as individuals that are actually exploring this and seeing like, hey, we could have a modern functional democracy that where people are representative based on where they stand politically and not just choosing between two parties that are having identity crisis right now.
Do you feel like Native Hawaiians, is the government working better than it used to for Native Hawaiians? Do Hawaiians have more of a voice in state government than before?
Yeah, I think so. But not because we were allowed it. It's because we fought for it every way we could. And to be clear, my work is always centering the lahui, like it's for Native Hawaiians, but like a lot of the organizations and movements that we stood up over since the Renaissance, since the 1970s, have been kind of race forward. And we're never going to win that way. It has to be like multiracial, intentionally, with like Hawaiian values at its core, but like connecting the immigrant struggle with the indigenous struggle. The fact that we're like on economic, environmental exile ourselves, like we should have a lot of empathy for folks that are pushed here and don't just come here to buy a big house. Like there's a lot of things that we could draw from each other. And like my general thing is just like, how do we rebuild the village? Like they just privatized everything that we had and kind of gate kept it and then made us buy it back. And like the only way you can buy it back is working for them. So it's like, how do you kind of reverse that phenomenon and just have like the common spaces we used to, where like after work you can just sit down and watch your kids play and have a drink with your neighbor and like that kind of stuff, the aunties and uncles that watch your kids and stuff. It just doesn't. It's like not there the way it used to be. So. Like it's, when I say like rebuilding the village, I mean it in like a real way, in like, how we develop, but also in that like rediscovering Hawaii's soul sort of way.
Yeah, that sense of Hawaii being a family place for your family. For all.
Just a village.
I just wanted to ask you this because we're going to be talking with someone, I know we have another guest talk about the military in Hawaii. What is your, how do you think about the military use of so much of Hawaii's lands?
I think the military's use of our lands can be really bad, obviously. You poison the water, you have lead poisoning on the beaches. It's also, people don't really talk about it, people like me don't really talk about it. It's also an example of how we can manage land in a really cool way. You sign up for the military, you get public grocery stores that's cheaper than Walmart. You get housing provided for you. You get 0% down, and then you get, if you're a family like mine, $4,300 I think now a month in mortgage payments. It's just, then you can flip that house in 3 years. Like that's socialism, just for them. Like we already know it's possible. So it's like, how do you provide that to like locals? And I don't even like fault, like most of my neighbors right now in the street I live in are military, and it's like you would do that if that was your family. You would take advantage of whatever programs are afforded to you. But like, what does that do to the local housing market, right? And how do we account for that to make sure that I have the same opportunity to buy a house as they do? And right now, I don't think any policymakers are really thinking that way. When I was there, it's like, how do we give military folks free tuition at UH? It's like, cool, like, support veterans and things, but like, it can't be at the expense of just local people trying to just make their ends meet. So it's like, it's kind of a cool model of how they set up their society, where you don't have to even make that much money and you can still have your needs met. Then you can go and start your business or a venture or organization or whatever you want to do, because you have freedom, you have healthcare, they have TRICARE, so imagine the innovation that'll be unleashed if we can set up a system like that for locals.
Do you think that's possible?
I think if you add up all the money we pay in taxes, just as individuals, and the money that we pay for healthcare and daycare, and you instead put that towards a program that provides all those things at better quality, yes, but instead we send that money to random foreign wars and subsidies for giant corporations, including the ones polluting us right here in Hawaii. So I not only think it's possible, I think it's the only sound policy decision that's democratic, efficient, and economically durable.
And how do you look at climate? Like how do you think about it and work toward, what do you work toward regarding climate?
Well, it used to be to avoid this 1.5 degrees of warming like that the UN, United Nations, identified as,
Critical tipping point.
critical tipping point. But now that we're pretty much on our way there, it's understanding that every decimal point of degree means more people dying and a harder life for my own kids. So it's just like any way we can move towards mitigation. But the good news is even people that have kind of give up on the mitigation side of like stopping warming are still kind of enthused about resiliency. Like, Chris Benjamin, for example, from, A&B, he's now like going into the climate thing head first. There are a lot of resiliency initiatives about how do we build and rebuild communities that will aid mitigation and will require transmission lines and rapid build out of clean energy. So, they don't have to be bifurcated in that way. So I'm like excited to just kind of figure out how we can make that work in communities and in ways that, maybe certain companies won't make as much money as they planned, but they'll still be fine. And the communities will be fine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people say this in the funder space, like we're not funding decarbonization, we're funding adaptation. And it's heart-wrenching for me because fossil fuel extraction doesn't just mean carbon in the air. I mean, it means environmental devastation. It means propping up an entire economy of waste and plastics. And I know you're not in any way saying like you support moving wholly to adaptation, but in the adaptation space, I'm seeing a much more motley political coalition where folks are like, okay, maybe there are going to be more hurricanes. And so maybe we need to prep. And the beautiful thing actually about disaster prep is it becomes one of those ways that you do work with your neighbors. You're like, hey, my friend has a chainsaw down the street. Like, I don't need a chainsaw. I know he has a big truck. He'll be able to move debris. So in some ways, to be the eternal optimist that I am, climate disaster might sow the very seeds of community building that we need in order to transform this entire system, because that's what I saw in Lahaina post-fire, was that the seeds of whatever we're transforming into were planted. And now, I mean, by Lahaina Strong and by Lahaina Community Land Trust, they're being nurtured.
Right.
And we don't even know what they're going to grow into.
Right. And not without intervention. It requires Lahaina Strong. It requires
actual like agriculture
trust.
And all the cultivation tactics.
Yeah. But like community won't just it requires people to actually like try to bring people together. Especially if you're gonna have a blank slate in a community, like it really wipes out a community. It's like who's has a paintbrush next,
Thank you. Really appreciated the conversation. This is great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, really good.
Awesome.
Here. There is this theme we've been talking about, and I don't know to the extent that it fits in, but foreign investment is moving into Hawaii in a variety of ways. One is private equity investing in businesses that we think are kama'aina. We think this is locally owned, and actually that's just a shell of foreign investment that's moving in and creating a different set of incentives.
When you say foreign investment, you mean outside of Hawaii?
Yeah, but that's what private equity is. I mean,
versus international. You're not talking about international investment. You're talking about
private equity is global. I mean, it's money from anywhere and everywhere. It's just a fund. I mean, maybe private equity has to be American, but yeah, to the general sense, non-Hawaii investment, whether it's American or Japanese or Chinese, that investment comes with less accountability, just structurally. And it's a phenomenon we should all be tracking. Whether or not we're going to do anything about it, we should be paying attention.
Yeah, and like you've mentioned a few times, also we have a phenomenon where more and more of our acreage, our limited acres in Hawaii, are being purchased by billionaires that are also not particularly accountable.
Let me just say one thing. So, like, if you ever play Monopoly, it always ends with one person having all the money and all the property. And that's just how American capitalism is sort of set up. And we're really seeing that right now in private equity. The only alternative to that is that attentional economies do run and governments is what private equity does is really just consolidate money and then use that to buy all the hotels and buy all the pieces on the board. Governments can do that as well. Governments can own, half of Amazon, like how it owns half of Alibaba somewhere else. They can move with housing and food providers in ways that actually help the people and are more democratic. So like a lot of people are like, oh, we can't let the government control this and that. But it's like the alternative is just a few folks that own these private equity firms controlling it instead. And there's nothing democratic about that. So there may be like faults in the government, and a lot of those faults come from oligarchs and corporations controlling it. And there's also bureaucratic problems, like it's actually inefficient and we got to solve for that. But the alternative is what's happening with private equity. It's the same mechanism of consolidating money and buying out everything. And when it has to do with your needs, now like Ergo Baby, that's useful to allow utility in that. I love the product, but it's also not like food or housing or healthcare. Like when it's that, then it's like you can just price gouge as high as you want because people will pay anything. And those are if you look at affordability and what costs have risen the most, it's those. TVs went down, but everything else that we actually need skyrocketed, and it's because of private equity. So like the only force big enough to fight back against that, unfortunately, is government.
So say someone came along and just dropped $1 million. You get to use this whatever way you want. What would you do with it?
Yeah, I think 10 years ago I'd run for governor.
That's right.
I think today I would pay down the mortgage.
Pay down the mortgage.
And the truck. Yeah, at the
And the
college
truck.
fund. Yeah. Very boring answer, but they get you. I'm a petty capitalist now.
It's critical.
Yeah.
It's critical.
So how can people find you if they want to learn more, get involved?
At Kaniela Ing, and at Our Hawaiʻi 808, I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us, Kaniela.
Yeah, that was a really great conversation.
Pilali is executive produced and co-hosted by myself, Ashley Lukens. My co-host is Ren Westcoat. Original music, audio and visual engineering, and production support by Walker Lukens. Our assistant producer is Julia Rani. Videography by Wakeful State. Creative communications by Anna Camacho, and operations support from Nikki Cordell and Natasha Rodriguez. Pilali is made possible with support from funder HUI, the WHH Foundation, and the Hawaii Leadership Forum. Extra thanks to my family for hosting the production in our living room.